Hey guys, Rafi here from the Endgame Investor, and I got Mario back on the show, Monaco 64, and we're going to talk about his experience as a bond guy, specifically with the JGB market, the Japanese government bond market, because I understand that the JGB market is very central to the entire Keynesian system, but I don't know exactly how it works, and Mario understands a little bit more about that. But first, before we started recording here, we were talking about something unrelated, but everything's related these days. There is this new medical guidance by some central health agency. I don't even remember what it was, that is advising advising doctors to pursue aggressive surgery and drug treatment of children that suffer from obesity, and insisting that it is not a lifestyle choice, that it is actually a disease. And I see this as, another effort to drug our kids in a very scary ways. And I pointed out to Mario that I noticed that as a kid, when I was, young, adolescent, even teenager, my diet was not the same as it is today. I changed my diet to paleo when I was in my mid-20s. I don't eat much processed flours and bread and stuff, or I stick to meat and vegetables. Anyway, I know, and I raised my kids that way. They've been eating that way since they were kids, and none of them are obese. But I also noticed that when I was a kid, I had orthodontic problems, not problems, like I had to get braces and the rubber bands and the whole treatment, and my eyesight deteriorated quickly. I had to get glasses when I was in third or fourth grade, and now it's stabilized, but I have pretty bad eyesight, and so does my brother and my sister and pretty much my whole family, my wife as well, except I noticed that my kids don't need glasses, and all their teeth are growing in pretty straight, and they haven't needed any orthodontics. And I'm speculating maybe, and I'm not a biologist or a nutritionist or a scientist, so I'm just making a speculation, if that's legal these days, if I can say that maybe there's something to do with what I am feeding them. And the problems that occurred in me as a kid might have to do with the food that I ate, and maybe made my jaw grow differently or something. I don't know. And my eye shape got warped as a kid because of the stuff that I ate as a kid that I don't eat anymore. And my kids were never exposed to much of that. Maybe. And it extends to just making it worse now. Treat our kids with drugs instead of feed them healthy food. Mario, what's your observations about that?
Well, I think it has everything to do with lifestyle and what you inject into your body. And by injecting, I mean the food that you eat and the what you drink. Because I was fairly chubby before I became like a teenager, and I always struggled with my weight. But then I kind of lost a lot of weight when around 13, 14. So it was actually fairly normal. But then I put weight back on when I went to university in the States, probably because we ate a lot of Domino's pizza, and stuff like that. A lot of bread. We were always told, that cereal is a good breakfast. But then for some reason, I decided to start running regularly in my early 20s when I lived in Switzerland, and I got hooked into running like over about 45 minutes to an hour a day. And I just lost a lot of weight, and it made me want to eat well. It's just funny how it works. If you're healthy and you're exercising, you want to eat well. I guess it's because you want your body to have the right fuel so you can keep running. And then later on uh, in my adult life, I would say probably back in after, well, in the city, you can get into bad habits because you're in the office all day, sitting there at the desk. You go out to get your lunch, you eat your lunch at the desk, and a lot of times you ate sandwiches and crisps. And then all of a sudden, when I moved homes in 2015, I went to sign up to the local GP, and they said, "Well, maybe you should do some tests. You're over 50." And so they found out that I had type 2 diabetes.
All
And
right, this is the video that made you famous, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of. Well, it's one of my biggest videos after the one with Clive.
Mhm.
Clive Thompson. But I didn't know anything about diabetes, and the doctor said, "Here, take metformin." And I tried to like talk to him and to have him explain what it was, and he just wanted to get rid of me. The doctor, at least he was seeing me at the time. Now you can't really see a doctor here in the UK. But then
Wait,
I
wait, wait,
started
hold on.
watching.
What does that mean? You can't see a doctor. What does that mean?
Well, it's very hard,
Oh,
to
because of
appointment.
shortages?
Yeah, or they don't want you to see doctors anymore. They want you to do everything online. It's this new thing that happened after COVID.
Oh
So
God.
yeah. But
Okay.
anyway, uh, then I started watching videos on YouTube about diabetes, and I found a very interesting TED talk by Dr. Sarah Hallberg. She was an American doctor. I think she passed away, unfortunately, with cancer a few years ago, but she explained exactly what diabetes was, and and she said you don't have to take medication, and you just have to change what you eat in your lifestyle, kind of going like on a paleo diet, like you said, and exercising. So instead of, doesn't mean I have to go running, but play more golf. If I'm going to go into town and I don't need my car, I walk. And then I reversed the type 2 diabetes. And in the beginning, the nurses, because I used to go every year to do a checkup, and the nurses were surprised because I said, I'm not taking metformin anymore. And they said, what did you do? And I just told them what I did. And
That
I
stuff
said,
messes with your liver, right? Is it
no,
changes your liver chemistry?
no,
Metformin?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know, but I try to avoid taking any prescription drugs,
Mhm.
and yeah, there's always side effects. And they were really surprised, that I totally reversed it. But nowadays, even the NHS, they're telling people what I was telling people, and it's not advice, it was just my experience. It was my video. I think it was 2016 or 17 that I did that video, and so they're telling them that now. Maybe back then I was considered a conspiracy theorist. But so I saw that as well about they want to treat young children for obesity, and even, I don't know, are they going to have an mRNA thing for them? Or they even said that they could start doing surgery. And I think that's completely wrong. My wife says a lot of times that young kids, sometimes they have what you call puppy fat. And then you grow up and you just like, you lose the weight. And I think, yeah, unfortunately, Rafi, I think it's this philosophy that, we need prescription drugs or treatments for everything, that we can't just do it naturally.
The situation when I was a kid, when you were a kid, it just gets progressively worse because I mean, look, a lot of my son's friends, I wouldn't say they're humongous, but a lot of them are obese because they don't really do anything. They don't get out anymore. They're on their phones, they're on their screens, and they don't get out and do kids' activities that much. And when they do, they come back, they come home and they eat crap. And it's a scary thing because these people are going to be the ones that grow up and staff the all the centralized bureaucracies and whatever that exists now and make it even worse.
Yeah.
So,
I
so
forgot to say, when I turned 15, I started playing golf and I got hooked into it. So after school, until I graduated from high school, every day I used to go play golf. So that's good exercise. People don't think it is, but if you play 18 holes, you walk about 6 miles.
yeah, that's actually an ideal if you're in the paleo thing. It's an ideal exercise because we were evolved for daily low level activity. We're not that's the kind of animals that we are, just itinerant, moving around, finding the next place to hang out for a while and then move on. Like, it's the nomad gene, but that's what we're supposed to be. Um, all right, so I mean, this is it's connected to inflation in ways that only people like us would understand because we're studying the system all the time. But as inflation infects the system, it centralizes things. Debt makes systems more efficient and centralized. And as you need to purchase cheaper and cheaper materials and make the economy more efficient because there's less resources, then you have these kinds of things where medicine is centralized. You can't see doctors anymore. You go to centralized supermarkets, you buy the same crap. It decreases biodiversity, decreases the variety in your diet, and makes you more monotonous. I mean, in my wife's case, I remember when we first got married, she was we didn't know this at the time, but she was on the cusp of hypothyroidism, and she was seeing a naturopath because she was having some symptoms of either low or high TSH. I don't remember what it was. But yeah, a few months after that, she was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which means basically it's an autoimmune disease where your immune system attacks your thyroid and it's dead, and that's it. So that's a condition that she has for the rest of her life now. And I wonder, speculating again, maybe it has to do with her diet as a kid, and all the stuff that she ate as a kid. Thank God she's fine now. But that's a thing that we have to deal with. And when we first got married, she had a severe case of psoriasis. It was inverse psoriasis, where the skin would fall apart from the inside, and it just made her itchy. And then when we switched to when she got off of processed grains and candies, and not candies, but cookies or whatever, and she just didn't eat any of that stuff, it went away in like 2 months, and that was it. And it's never come back.
Well, I'm going to be a bit conspiratorial and go back like over 100 years, and to when the Rockefellers they created the American Medical Association. And many people don't know that oil, hydrocarbons, petroleum, whatever you want to call it, is one of the biggest ingredients in the prescription drugs. So it's weird, that. And I think it's all part of inflation, as you say. Things get more expensive, so you have to eat lower quality stuff, and then you get like processed food, which is, like factories for food, factory for farming. Everything, becomes, like you said, centralized. Yeah, and I think before the Rockefellers, and they created this American Medical Association. It was called homeopathy, I think, and allopathy is what we have now. It's not like trying to cure you, but give you drugs to decrease the side effects of your ailment, but it doesn't really cure you. Then they don't want you cured, because if you get cured and healthy, the pharmaceutical companies will make no money. And the other thing about inflation, changing subjects, I remember when growing up in the 60s and 70s, a lot of stuff was packaged in bottles. And I used to go with my mom when I was a little boy to the supermarket in Brazil, and everything at the end of when she went through the till, there was actually a person there helping at the time, and they wouldn't pack it in plastic bags. They used to take wooden cases, or small pallet boxes from the back of the supermarket, and put your stuff in there. There's no bags or anything. And I think it's to do with inflation, because glass and other stuff got more expensive, so they said, oh, let's use plastics. That's really cheap. That's from petroleum as well. So yeah, I think inflation has a lot to answer for, and inflation, as well as we know, has led to a lot of overinvestment, malinvestment, and I would even say that the environment has been hurt by inflation, because people are doing a lot more than they normally would have done under a sound money system, more traveling, more of everything.
Yeah, well, when your body, I mean, look at a drug addict or someone who's addicted to cocaine or methamphetamine or something. You see how his body's acting internally. It's just going wild. I mean, he might have amazing ideas and these like manic projects in his head, and some of them might even be successful, but he's not going to last long. So that's the same thing. That's the same thing between the relationship between humanity right now on the planet. I mean, climate change skeptics we might not be don't confuse us with non-environmentalists. I'm very concerned about the environment, and I'm always concerned with the amount of resources that I use. But I recognize the narrative here of climate change as, oh, we need absolute control. As I know where that's going. I understand now. And though I was fooled 2 weeks by the previous narrative that we were all forced into, I'm not going to be fooled for a second by this one. Forget it. Let's just keep waking people up, and don't be ashamed for being an environmentalist. Just realize that the whole system is out of whack because of the monetary system, which regulates our interaction with resources. That's what it does, and we're not regular anymore. We need to get back to regularity.
Yeah. The other thing that inflation does, and also the policy of QE and artificially suppressed interest rates that we've had for a long time, it benefits capital. So big corporations, and that destroys all the small mom and pop businesses, and that means less choice, less quality, and yeah. And the other thing it does, it destroys the value of labor, because the big corporations, they have access to cheap capital, so they try to automate more and like pay people less. It's all really it's a really bad system, the unhinged, fiat currency system. And that's why I guess we're told, more about it than I do in scriptures, that you should have honest weights and measures.
Yes, that is a big deal. So I wanted to go into your experience with the Japanese government bond market. I think Jim Grant came out with an interview. I think he was on Zero Hedge today, about how he thinks that the Japanese government bonds are like a special fulcrum of the entire fiat monetary system. And I'm thinking, is just an individual person. Why would any individual person, buy a Japanese government bond pinned at 0.5%? For what? Who is buying these things? They have to be some kind of big piece of the puzzle somewhere in the system. What are they for? How are they dealt with? What was your experience when you were selling some of these things? And who was buying them? And what do they do now?
Well, I started out at a firm called Cantor Fitzgerald, and I used to deal in like cash. It's called cash government bonds. The real government bond market, not the futures market, which I later went to work at. And I did U.S. Treasuries in particular. I even did Canadian government bonds, all kinds of government bonds, sometimes Japanese government bonds, but not that much. It's only when I became a futures and options broker, my focus was government bond futures. And I did. It's funny because the JGB future for the JGB government bond, is the 10-year JGB future, is 10 times bigger in terms of notional amount than treasuries. And what used to happen, clients used to come during London hours to trade the JGB futures. They could be traded on the London Futures Exchange, the Life Exchange, but you had to roll them over. You had to send an instruction to your broker. We had a broker in Tokyo, so that he would sell that position that we took in London and then open it on the TSC, the Tokyo or the Tokyo Stock Exchange, the Tokyo Futures Exchange. So, and the JGB future was 10 times bigger than the Treasury futures. So if you bought like 3 or 4 JGBs, that was always like a nightmare, because if you forgot to roll it over, you could have a huge loss. But the reason why Jim Grant, I think, is talking about the importance of the JGB market is because it's the second biggest government bond market, second or third. I think the German is very big as well. So, and I think, Japanese creditors, they're the biggest creditors on planet Earth. Japan, I think about 3.8 trillion dollars. And as to who owns all these JGBs, well, I think the Bank of Japan, they own just over 50% of it. So they've bought a lot of it. And then the other people who own it are like the savers institutions in Japan, high net worth individuals, the hedge funds. And it's the same question people used to ask: why do people buy German government bonds? The Bund, the 10-year Bund for a negative yield. A lot of times it's just for trading, because the longer the maturity of a bond and the lower the yield, the quicker it's called duration. Convexity. The quicker the price moves. So you could buy a 10-year JGB, let's say a few years ago, when it was negative for minus 0.2, and if the yield dropped to minus 0.3, you would have made a lot in terms of the principal. So there's a lot of people just trading, and a lot of governments and regulators, they're still forcing pension funds and other people to hold government bonds because they say it's not risky. But we've seen that government bonds are risky in the last 12 months. Even the short-term treasuries have dropped like 8%. So that's why. And the thing about the JGBs, and I think it's changing now, is that the Bank of Japan has been able to keep yields and rates low for a long time. And now that's changing. They're fighting a losing battle, I think. And when yields start going up, it means that all the people that have been buying JGBs for the last 20 years, if they have long-term JGBs especially, they're going to start seeing big, huge losses on their books. And they're going to start selling that. They're going to start selling a lot of the foreign bonds that they have as well to make up for the losses. And as Jim Grant said, it's a big part. The U.S. Treasury market is the biggest market, and then I think it's the JGB, and it's a very liquid market. Well, actually, not too liquid, but the Japanese yen is still a major reserve currency. It's part of after the euro is the third or the second biggest weighting for the dollar index. So yeah, today they had their meeting, and they decided to keep the yield curve control at 0.5, up to 0.5 for the 10-year. Some people thought they might raise it again because they're losing control of it. Did you know they've had to do $65 billion of QE since December 20th? How much more are they going to be doing now in the next month until their next meeting? I think a lot. Right now, it looks like the yields have come off a bit, but I think people are going to test it. And, of course, that bond yields, government bond yields, they affect the price of every financial asset, because people use those yields to discount forward earnings and the price of stocks and bonds. And I see that really being bad for the value of stocks and bonds going forward, especially in Japan. And it's funny because I think Tavi Costa, sorry, he put up a chart of the Japanese central bank asset, their balance sheet, and it's making new records. They did do QT, the last few years, and now it's going right back up. And Japan leads the way. The BOJ, they started QE in 01, and I think that's what's going to happen to the Fed, to the ECB, to the BOE. They're all going to reverse and start doing massive QE. And the more debt we have, the more QE they have to do. And that's why, unless they want to just pull the plug on everything, I think they have to keep inflating or they'll die.
Yeah. So one thing that Jim Grant did say in his interview that I disagreed with, and to Grant's credit, like, he didn't say he was sure about this, because he was just saying if the past is a key to the present, then yeah, we could be at a multi-decade trend of higher interest rates. I agree with the direction. I'm looking in nature, and or if you think of like a Jenga pile, that game where you're taking blocks out of the tower.
Oh, yeah.
Then hold on here. I don't see how you can build up, or you can build a building, but when you're demolishing it, it's not like you take it apart slowly, piece by piece.
Yeah.
right? When you implode, when you have a controlled demolition of a stadium, it still goes down all at once.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's very quickly, isn't it? Yeah.
so I don't see how we can have multi-decade deconstruction of this humongous pyramid. I just don't see busts ever going that way. I think
Yeah.
at some point we're going to hit some kind of load-bearing pillar,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
everything's just going to come crashing down. There's going to be nothing they can do. I just don't know where that is. But when it is hit, it's going to be studied for many decades to come. And
Yeah.
hopefully this time we won't get it wrong, like the Keynesians got the crash of 29 wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I've looked at the interest rates and bond cycles going back like over 100 years. And I've come to kind of the conclusion that Jim Grant has, that we have 40 years of, rising rates. But like you said, if we do have like a crisis, like the European sovereign debt crisis, we saw that Greek 10-year bond yields went up to 40%. So yeah, we could have that happen to the JGBs, treasuries, gilts, European government bonds. And that would happen very quickly. It's a bit like, in the bull market, you going up an escalator, and in the bear market, you go down the elevator shaft.
Mhm.
But maybe what will happen, I don't know. We could have a crisis, everything implodes, and then in the new system, we're still going to have rising rates. I don't know where they will be. There might be this crisis right in the beginning, and I agree. And I think what was happening in the UK in September, October last year was a forerunner of what could happen. And I don't think anything's solved, because I think people are waking up to the fact that all this QE is with nothing. It's out of thin air. It's not based on reality. And you and I know that, but when more and more people start realizing that, I think that's when things are going to get pretty interesting.
Well, what I think might happen, I think there is a way to reconcile these views of things. There could be, as you said, many decades of rising rates, but I still think there's going to be some kind of major realignment, like overnight, over a week, over a month, maybe, or something like that. But if you go back to like 1933, 1934, that's exactly what the revaluation of gold from 21 to 35 was. That was the big crash in purchasing power for people who own dollars, because all of a sudden they had this many ounces of gold. Now they have a lot less, which is why, FDR had to steal it all before he did that. But that's the big collapse. And then, so what I'm saying is that there's going to be some kind of humongous, very sudden change in the value of money when gold is forced to back the rest of central bank liabilities to whatever percent, let's 70, 80, 90, whatever it is. It's going to be a much bigger number than it is now. It's going to be very quick. You're not going to be able to trade in and out of it at all. And then once that happens, and then money substitutes are more gold backed than they are now, much more gold backed, even if they survive at all. Let's assume they survive. Then from that, after that huge realignment, monetary realignment from the revaluation of gold, then you could have a multi-decade slow rise in interest rates. But you have to, I don't think the slow rise in interest, the slow gradual bear market in bonds can really start until we have that monetary earthquake first. And then we have a base on which to, continue a bond bear market.
Yeah, you're probably right about that, I would say.
Okay, I think that works.
No, I do agree, because I've thought of the same thing as well, because I thought 40 years is such a long time and you can't really unwind the biggest bubble ever in history over 40 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even 40 years in in a financial sense is a very short period of time, because how long has humanity, I mean, been really messing with money in the extreme sense? I mean, when did human civilization really discover that it can really put a monkey wrench in the entire monetary system and really drug itself up? I think that's relatively modern. I mean, what debt cycles, it shouldn't, there shouldn't even be 40-year cycles. You should have generally stable interest rates, And
Yeah.
I guess, there's a world war or something, and then that depletes savings, then you would have to rebuild savings by raising interest rates for many years. But really, the prices of things shouldn't really fluctuate that much. Um,
No, the sound money system, they shouldn't. I mean, in the 1800s, when we had the gold standard, if you go to the Bank of England inflation calculator and you type inflation in from 1821 to 1914, and it was minus 0.1. There's the money, because the pound was as good as a sovereign. And I think they kept a 33% backing throughout that period. And as your comment there about the history of money not being that long, I agree. And I'm actually reading this book here that was sent to me by a viewer. It's the economic success and failure of the Roman Empire. So I would say the Romans and maybe the Greeks started, looking at money and using money and credit. So it's about 2,500 years. It's not that long.
Yeah, well, the Romans were around for about 600 years, and the history of my monetary system is really overlapped a lot with Rome, because the Mishnah and the Talmud, we have a lot. We're discussing in the monetary cases there. We're discussing basically the Roman monetary system, and inflation. The Talmud was written or compiled over about 100, 200 years. And they didn't inflate the monetary system that much, so prices are pretty stable throughout the entire work. But I asked somebody this, and he said, yeah, well, the rate of price inflation in Rome for those 200-300 years is about maybe 1 or 2% a year, the so-called target inflation rate of the Federal Reserve. But that still led to the economic collapse. And I was going over Daniel Oliver's last paper, and he was talking about usury, and he was talking about the end of the Roman society, right? So he was saying that, like, the end of the Roman Empire had a lot of stackers, had a lot of people who realized what was going on, whether intellectually or academically, not really, but like just instinctually, they just hoarded gold. So archaeologists are still finding piles of gold in old Rome. But the point of stacking gold is to reinvest it once the powers that be can no longer steal capital through the inflationary process. But the problem with a slow inflation is that by the time it's finished, anyone who understands anything about capital and reinvestment is already gone, and you have a society that is so bereft of any logic anymore, because the human lifespan is like maybe 40, 50 years back then, that they just don't understand what to do anymore. So one of the advantages of a quick collapse within a generation or two, and how fast it's going now, is by the time it collapses, there's still going to be people with minds out there that know what to do. So at least that.
The Romans couldn't inflate as quickly as we can because they use coinage. But by 476 AD, which is seen as the date for the collapse of the Western Roman Empire, the denarius, the silver coin, had almost no silver anymore. But now we can print, we got credit, and we can print, create credit out of thin air. The Romans didn't do that. And that's probably why it's going to happen a lot quicker now.
Yeah, it's going to be quicker. It's going to be more extreme. It's going to be something we're all going to remember, and it's going to be soon. And I just hope that by the end of it, we can reconnect on the internet and discuss what just happened. Things might go down for a while. I don't know. I don't know what.
Or maybe even meet in person, because
yeah, that would be good.
Come over to Israel, or you come over here. Be nice.
Yeah. Well, I'm set to travel this summer. Hopefully, God willing, I'll be in Florida. We'll see what happens. I hope the monetary system can just stay a little, just a little bit longer. It's like hope it doesn't rain if I don't have an umbrella, but I don't want to be stuck there when it happens. So I want to get back here soon. So it's good talking to you. Do you have any closing remarks, anything you want to share with the viewers before I go and pick up my daughter?
So yeah, I think people should keep an eye financially, and for the markets, an eye on the JGB market over the next month, up until the next meeting. You can check that on investing.com under government bonds. It's quite easy to keep track of. And the other thing I would say to people is not to be scared of what's going on, especially if you've prepared for things monetarily, but you also need to prepare for things, I think, spiritually. And that's for each individual person to, to do their own job on that. And yeah, don't be scared, because things are never linear. They're always in cycles. Things get bad, things get better, and so things never stay bad forever.
Yeah. Well, one thing I can say for sure is that those of us that understood basically that this system is not here to last, we've had a lot of spiritual exercise and we've been forced to grow, or it's basically grow spiritually or die. And for them, it's inflate or die. I mean, we're on opposite sides of the system here. And we are our lives have been extremely difficult, and on their side, they've benefited from the inflation. But in terms of what the purpose of life is, I would say we just had a lot of exercise, and we don't understand it very well, but we understand it a little bit better than we did 3 years ago. So good luck to us all, and we'll see what happens next month.
Yeah, great. Take care.
Okay, take care, Mario.